Hello, Augies Worldwide. I'm Dave Casler, amateur radio call sign KE0OG, here with another episode of Ask Dave. MFJ recently announced a new antenna. It's actually CushCraft, I guess, and it is the HV-4E. And it does your classic bands, 40, 20, 15 and 10, all in one antenna that is less than 20 feet high. Now, a normal 40-meter vertical would be 33 feet high, but this is much lower, so it could actually hide behind your house. If you have some trees on your property, you could just stick it up in the middle of the trees. It's a easy antenna to hide. So what we're going to do with this antenna, which I requested MFJ to send one to me, and they did. We're going to put this thing up, put it together first, put it up, and then we're going to see how it works. We'll do all the usual tests. Now, with an antenna this short, I'm expecting a compromise, at least on 40 meters, of not quite covering the whole band. We'll see. We'll check that out. So I've got a place for this thing out in the trees, just like you might hide something that comes to keep something away from the homeowners association. Let's first of all cut the end of this off. It's got some staples in here. All right, let's see what we've got here. Parts packed inside of each other. Well, there's a lot of parts, and we have an empty box. Okay, here are the instructions. HF-4E vertical antenna. Now, this is where you get your loading in the middle, and I guess that's this piece right here. There's some hefty coils on here, okay, and we've got this is where the coax is going to connect right here, okay, and these look like radial tie downs. We'll see, maybe that's not the case. There's some things sticking out from here. Okay, lots of hose clamps and stuff. Now, like all antennas of this type, these antennas come as a kit. You'll note that except for the SO239 here and the pre-wired assembly, most of the rest of this comes in parts and has to be put together. So now this is a ground-mounted radio, so it's looking for lots of radials on the ground. Now I'm noticing here 40, 20, 15, and 10. Okay, the approximate bandwidth on 40 meters is 150 kilohertz. Okay, that's not the entire band. On the other bands, we have on 20 covers the entire band, 15 covers the entire band, 10 meters covers part of the band. So we're going to, as a goal, try and get this to cover either the digital or the single sideband. And on 10 meters, we want to get it to cover like from 300 to maybe 870 kilohertz, okay? So this is the kind of antenna. It's fairly inexpensive, as you can see in this picture taken from the MFJ website. And the antenna may be disassembled to the extent necessary for transmitting to a temporary location. And here are lots of little diagrams how to put this thing together. Okay, so it's got a base assembly, the loading coil assembly in here, and goes all the way up to the top. And the loading coil assembly is in fact assembled all the way, okay? So each radial spoke level requires, and it talks about radials. These are not what I'd call radials. These are capacitive things here, okay? Now, let's see what it talks about. Antenna tuning must be connected. It's difficult to use this when it's all bent up like this. Okay, base mounting. It's got a tube here. It doesn't say anything about guy wires, but we will put guy ropes on this thing. Okay, now it says the normal resonant frequency of this antenna is at or below the bottom of each amateur band. This allows the user to trim a small amount of the inside end of the capacitance spokes to raise the resonant frequency. Okay, and so we're going to go through all of this. So we're going to evaluate this antenna based on ease of construction, ease of erection with radials, and ease of tuning and ease of use. Okay, we may not get them all in this first video, but what we're going to try to do in this first video is to get the antenna assembled. Okay, and I'm going to let my assistant Aidan do that assembly, and he can do it right here on the kitchen table, I think, and we'll see how that goes. I noticed in the very most recent issue of QST, which is April, that MFJ has created another antenna designed specifically at the market for new generals. It's classic in that it only addresses 4 bands, 40, 20, 15, and 10, which are the classic amateur bands. It doesn't address the so-called work bands of 30, 17, and 12. But those bands are very narrow. They don't get as much activity as the other bands. Although with the sunspot cycle performing well, they can be good DX bands. But this antenna is available for less than $250, and it's small. It's actually less than 20 feet high. So what we've done so far with the antenna is an unboxing, and we are going to now assemble the antenna. And to test the instructions, to see how clear the instructions were, I gave it to Aidan, my assistant, and he constructed it pretty much by himself and didn't have very many questions. I was very pleased with that. Now, there are some things that are left out of the instruction manual, which is unfortunate. When you finish the antenna, you have to mount it on this plastic mounting post. The basic mount is connected to a permanent piece of steel pipe or whatever you might have stuck in the ground, okay? While we're talking about assembling the antenna, we ought to talk about radials. This antenna is designed to either be mounted on the ground with radials or up in the air with tuned radials. Now, the tuned radials have to be full-length radials. So for the 40-meter radials, for example, they need to be 33 feet each, one on either side. That's 66 feet. The fact that the antenna is shorter vertically does not change the length of the tuned radials. Far better to ground mount this antenna. Then you can put in more reasonable radials. We looked at the amount of wire that we had left, which is a white THHN, that's the insulation, stranded 12-gauge wire. And we had enough to do 8 15-foot radials. So we made them. I've got some pictures here of Aidan making those radials, and we put them out and spread them out evenly on the ground. Now, why 15 feet? That's because that's the amount of wire that we had, and it's in keeping with the short size of the antenna. I mean, ideally, you might want a little bit longer radials, but then again, when I tested the DX Commander Classic, I just used 10-foot radials for that, although we had more than 8. So that's what we did for radials. Not really discussed a lot in here, nor is there a discussion of ground-mounted versus roof-mounted types of radials, okay? Radials are a very important part of a vertical antenna that's a quarter-wave vertical, and that's what this is. This is not one of those antennas that you can mount without radials. You need radials, okay? So we did make some. There's nothing in here about guying this antenna. So that means that you've got to have a pretty sturdy mount so it doesn't get blown over in a windstorm. Now, like I said, it's less than 20 feet tall. So it will fit in a backyard and not be visible from the front. Also, if you have a tree or two, you can put the antenna right next to or into the tree, and it will do very well and be essentially invisible. Now, putting the antenna together requires some tools. They even list the tools in here that you need. They're simple hand tools, and you can get the thing together fairly quickly. Tuning takes a little longer. Now, there's another thing they don't talk about. On the base mount, where the cable screws in, there's just a piece of wire sticking straight out. Now, what you need to do is turn that up, bring the antenna down over the plastic part, and put the wire against the antenna, and then the hose clamp around the whole thing. Another thing you need to be aware of, and this is something that Aidan learned, was that there are slots between the different pieces, and then a hose clamp which pulls those two pieces together. If you put the hose clamp up too high, it does not get enough leverage to close that. So put the hose clamp down at the bottom of what you're doing. Now, to tune the antenna, you are going to vary the height. And way, way in the back here, there is a little thing that talks about tuning. And we'll show this on the screen. 40 meters, a 1-inch reduction of the upper mast equals approximately 32 kilohertz, or not much. We ended up having to reduce that by close to 9 inches to get it to work. 20 meters, now there are spokes sticking out in the middle of the antenna, which you can see here. And these are adjusted for length. These are capacity hats. If you look at the way the antenna is built, you've got a common part, and then it comes up to an assembly. And I know they tell you these aren't traps. They're technically loading, okay? But the way they're constructed with a capacitance and a coil, they're intended to be the termination of the antenna. It turns out that each of the 4 terminations are wired in parallel, which makes this a kind of a version of a fan antenna, but not, because there's enough inductance and capacitance to resonate what is down below it. So it says it will not cover all of 40. We found that we were able to cover all of 40 less than 2-to-1 SWR. And 20 also, we did have to adjust the spokes. And on 15, it was less than 2-to-1 across the entire band, so we left it alone. Very broad tuning on 15 meters. And also there on 10 meters, broad tuning, we got it under 2-to-1 on the part of the band that most people use, like from 28.3 to 28.5 is the technician part. 28.7 is kind of an upper limit for most generals. They generally don't venture higher than that. And the 28.1 to 28, I'm sorry, 28 to 28.3 is CW. So I'll show you all those pictures. Now I just want to talk a little bit about the what you get in the kit. Most antennas these days, you get loose parts in a great big bag and a bunch of instructions. The HV-4E, for example, has over 200 parts. But in this one, the inner part right here, there's a coil assembly that's about that long, which actually has been pre-manufactured. And I'm going, hooray! They actually made something in advance so you don't have to figure out how to construct this very intricate part. But you do have to put the spokes on it. The spokes are the capacity hats for the 10, 20, 10, 15, and 20 meter bands. And then the rest that it needs for the 40 meter is up above that. Now that is shortened by loading. So when you shorten an antenna by loading, the key compromise is going to be bandwidth. But as you've noticed in these pictures, this is the picture for 40 meters, the SWR. Note that it is under 2-to-1 across the entire band. So use the tuner in your radio to bring it in. 20 meters under 2-to-1 across the entire band. Using the tuner in your antenna, I'll just flatten that out. 15 meters under 2-to-1 across the entire band. And 10 meters under 2-to-1 on the parts of the band that we use, under 3-to-1 under of a much broader area. Okay. We were on 14 meters. I'm sorry. We were on 20 meters, 14 megahertz, and we're going to do a receive comparison test. This right now is the MFG antenna, and the other is my station vertical. So this is the HV-4E station vertical. This is the HV-4E. Now I want you to notice the conversation taking place in the sideband region, and then also take a look at the FT8 region. Okay. Station antenna, new antenna, station antenna, new antenna, station antenna, new antenna. Okay, we can talk about this just a little bit. The new antenna is less noisy than the station vertical. The signal to noise ratio for the FT8 stays about the same between the two. This is the conversation I was referring to. It's going up and down with the band. This one stays fairly constant here when people are transmitting. It goes back and forth. Here's a signal right here. If I now take a look at this station right here. Okay, I'm just going to put the cursor right by it. Now as I switch from new antenna to old antenna, what I'm looking at is the signal to noise ratio. How much does it come up above the noise? And the answer is it seems almost the same to me. So the HV-4E is a quieter antenna. In most of the attempts that I made, it was comparable to the station vertical. So somewhere in here it says that there are extra spokes. These are the little capacity head pieces. We did not get any extra spokes. We had exactly the right amount. Okay, so here's what we've done so far. We've unboxed the antenna, erected it, and tested it. It is all set up. The next video we're going to do on-the-air testing and comparison with another vertical that I have, just to see how well this vertical performs. I'm quite excited about that. It's officially a CushCraft product, and but of course that's MFJ, because MFJ owns both CushCraft and Hygain, as well as Ameritron and Vectronics, and keeps those products going. They're still available, even though the companies that made them are long gone as independent companies. So that's what we have here now. We're going to try and put as many photographs as we can into this video. And I would like to pause for a moment and ask you please to subscribe if you are not subscribed. Now, how much bother is it to subscribe? The answer is it's one click. And that's it. You're subscribed. Now, if you want notifications about when this channel puts up new videos, you will need to click the bell in addition. And I'd also like you to click like and share the video if you would. We do have a Patreon page at patreon.com/KE0OG. And until we next meet, 73.